Hi to everyone who is trickling in. We will get started in just a couple minutes to allow a little more time for folks to join us. If you want to introduce yourself, feel free to do so. And if you have any immediate questions, we'll have a Q&A bar that we will be monitoring and doing our best to answer throughout the call. So again, thanks everyone for joining. We'll start in just a couple minutes. Okay, it looks like the number of participants is joining is slowing down, so I think we should go ahead and get started. Hi everyone and welcome. My name is Tal Havivi. I lead R&D at ISTE and ASCD, an education nonprofit member-based organization. Thank you for joining today's webinar, Stand Out in the Crowd, in the Crowded EdTech Market, Certification Strategy for Growth. Over the next 40-ish minutes, we'll hear from Natalia Kucirkova, who leads the International Center for EdTech Impact, on her work to create coherence of the EdTech certifications globally. We'll be hearing a little bit around the ISTE seal, and we're lucky to be joined by two great EdTech leaders as well. Andreas, who is the VP of Academic and Research from Binary Logic, and Jesper, who is the COO at GraphoGame. They'll be sharing why and how they've leveraged certifications to boost their organization's impact. But first, a few quick housekeeping items. We'll be posting some important links and information in the chat during the presentation, so please be sure to follow along. Also, please engage with us. We want to hear from you. Feel free to post any comments or feedback in the chat during the presentation. If you have specific questions, please post these separately in the Q&A section, and we'll do our best to answer these in the chat through the presentation. Okay, so just to set the table a little bit in terms of what are we doing here? Why are we talking about certifications? One challenge is that evaluating EdTech is really complicated and difficult for school systems. There are people who are technologists and understand the language of technology, and there are people who are educationalists and understand the language of education, and there's not many people who truly understand both. So last year, ISTE and ASCD aligned with other major US EdTech organizations, including CEDA, COSIN, Digital Promise, CAST, One EdTech, and InnovateEDU, on 5 key areas that we've identified as important for school systems to evaluate. That said, we know that school systems have really limited time and very limited resources, especially today, to evaluate EdTech. And they also have specific requirements that are either driven by compliance or for instructional purposes. And EdTech providers have to choose, they have to figure those out and figure out which EdTech providers meet those requirements. And on the flip side, EdTech providers, who's most of you on this call, have to figure out and try to prioritize what is most important to do to get in the door with school districts and to signal to them that, hey, we might be a good fit and we're credible and we're high quality. For this reason, trusted quality EdTech certifications exist, and that they are here to serve as a shared language between EdTech providers and school systems to signal potential fit and help sift through the noise. So just as a quick example, ISTE+ASCD has 80,000 education practitioners in its membership, so we're a member-based organization, and we've heard a clear need from our members, a signal that they need a signal for tools that are technically and pedagogically usable in modern day classrooms. So essentially, a teacher can use it out of the box and it works well, both from an instructional standpoint, a pedagogical standpoint, and a technical standpoint. So the ISTE+ASCD R&D team developed a research-backed evaluation framework that informed our certification, which is the ISTE seal. And in addition to our 80,000 members who use the ISTE seal as a sign of credibility, we're starting to see the seal be adopted in more formal procurement mechanisms, such as the second largest school district in the United States included in an RFP that, if you have the ISTE seal, you get a few extra points on your application, your RFP response, because this school district wanted to use this as a trusted signal to help sift through some of the noise. Okay, with that, I'm going to turn it over to Natalia. We'll hear more about ways that certifications help EdTech providers distinguish themselves later. But for now, Natalia, I will turn it to you to share more about certifications globally.
Thank you, Tal. It's a pleasure to be here. So my name is Natalia Kucirkova. I work as professor in EdTech, and I am very interested in evidence-based EdTech, so EdTech that really has some tangible proof of their impact. Obviously, we mean positive impact on learners. And as part of the work I've been leading with colleagues, we've been looking at a framework that will allow us to look at quality across different tools being used internationally. Because as Tal said, we do need to have some kind of common language when we are speaking to schools, when we are speaking to policymakers, so that they can distinguish what works, what is an evidence-based tool that they can then recommend or procure or roll out nationally. We do know that the market is quite saturated when it comes to EdTech solutions these days. So we really need to make sure that those that stand out are the ones that have been tested, that have been evaluated, and that can really show that they have some evidence behind them. Now, frameworks and certifications can be a very good means of doing that. And on the next slide, I sort of summarized the need for consolidating these different frameworks. Given that education is quite a complex area, you have many stakeholders involved, you have the teachers, you have the students, you have parents, and you have the EdTech providers. Everyone wants to ensure that children learn to the best way possible. What happened in the research side was that there have been many different frameworks to evaluate how students learn with EdTech tools. Indeed, 74 different methods have been found by one review, and another research study found 65 different frameworks. So we really don't need more frameworks. We need to consolidate the frameworks that exist. And on the next slide, we have the 5Es framework, which is essentially a consolidated framework that builds on what global agencies like UNESCO, World Bank have been advocating for in terms of having a harmonized way of understanding educational impact. This falls into 5 buckets. Efficacy, that is looking at the simple question, does the solution work? And as you can see, it fits with the key SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals number 3, 8, and 4, and is looking at solutions that have been tested through lab-based methods. So different experiments, randomized control trials, really methodologies that test these different tools in a very rigorous manner. Under effectiveness, we are asking, could the solution work? And the could signals that because educational technology is used in conjunction with what teachers do in the classrooms, it's very important to include teachers' voices in the testing. So teachers, evaluations, participatory research, dynamic R&D, these are all the studies that are included under effectiveness. And then moving from the learning impact towards the broader impact, we have equity, ethics, and environment. And these 3 E's are looking at aspects such as data use, generative AI ethics, equity in terms of marginalized groups, and environment in terms of the connection between green and digital education. Next slide, please. Now, this 5E's framework is based on research that has been conducted over the past 2.5 years. There are 5 different reports that substantiate it, which you're welcome to have a look at, and that essentially explain these different dimensions in more detail. On the next slide, we have a simplified version of the framework that is nowadays used by EduEvidence, which is a certification body that adopted this framework, and that is looking at the impact of educational technologies in relation to these 5 E's. And on the next one, we have national adaptations of the 5 E's. So as you know, when it comes to national rollout in many countries globally, it's very important to work with ministries of education and the policymakers who make these procurement decisions. So for them to have a consolidated framework that they can trust, that is coming from independent research and that has been used in other countries, is often a very good shortcut to evaluate the tools that are being presented to them. So the 5 E's has been recently adopted by the Netherlands, the 3E framework, the Dutch framework, as well as by other countries that are currently piloting their own frameworks and their own certification schemes, such as Brazil, Ghana, and Lithuania. And on the next slide, I think we have the combination of the ISTE certification and the EduEvidence. So EduEvidence is based on the 5 E's framework. As I said, it's a certification scheme that encompasses different certifications out there globally. And given ISTE's status and the name that they have as a brand, it's very important for EduEvidence to ensure that there is a good compatibility. So the EdTech index that lists the different certifications that EdTech organizations have, that speaks directly with the data that is behind the 5 E's framework that researchers have compiled. And this is a very nice way of how tools that have been certified in the US can then speak the global language, so to speak, in terms of being included in the EduEvidence database. And on the next slide, Tal, I think we have little...
I think to the next slide, we'll turn it over to
Jesper, yes.
But actually, yes, but before I do, I just thank you, Natalia. One quick thing I'll just mention here about the EdTech Index. If you are an EdTech provider, just so you know, the EdTech Index is a EdTech catalog where K-12 decision makers go to as a first stop to evaluate EdTech products. We do our best to aggregate as much of the critical information as possible into one place to simplify it for decision making, right? What are the things that you know you're going to need as an educator to make your case for an EdTech product? It lives here on the EdTech Index. If your product is not yet listed, we can send this in a follow-up, but you're able to list that product for free at ltd.iste.org. Just put it in the chat. Okay, so I just wanted to give a little shameless plug there. Jesper, now I will turn it over to you.
Wonderful. I can't see the slides.
We can see them though.
Okay, well, I trust that they're there. Hi, my name is Jesper. I'm the co-founder and chief operating officer of GraphoGame, which is a company that makes early literacy games for kindergarten and primary school teachers and schools. Next slide, please. So a bit of a background on what we are, just to give a context on why we went down the certification journey and why it's so important. So as I mentioned, GraphoGame is a gamified app that teaches the fundamentals of reading in 12 languages currently. Basic ideas that you learn, letters, syllables, and how to combine them into words. And the idea of our apps is to provide strong remediation for students who are learning to read at a young age, usually kindergarten or primary school, depending on the curriculum of the country. And next slide, please. So just the important context for us of why we went down the certification journey is that we are a research spin-off company. So originally GraphoGame was a research initiative between universities around the world, and around 2017 they realized that that as universities they can't implement all these amazing literacy solutions on their own. So we came in there as a partner to these universities to gamify these amazing literacy learning methodologies that they created and put them out to market. But the interesting thing here is that while we inherited a huge amount of research, 300 publications, peer-reviewed articles, master's degree levels, PhDs, about GraphoGame and its efficacy and effectiveness in different contexts, we were lulled into the belief that because we have a lot, it means that we have evidence and we can show it clearly to the end user. Next slide, please. So, as I mentioned, we inherited this huge research base, and we assume that because there's hundreds of links that we can share with decision makers at schools or ministries of education or wherever we're working, we thought that that equals that we have a strong evidence base. And we got in touch with Natalia, and Natalia mentioned the importance of certification, and we thought, yeah, it'll be easy. We just share a few of our amazing journals, and Bob's your uncle will get an amazing certification. But because of the weight and size of that research base, it wasn't clear really what the evidence is and what does it prove and what does it not prove. And it was a sobering moment when giving that huge over of research that it wasn't clear immediately to Natalia that what does the English version of GraphoGame really do? What is the impact? And so even as an organization, the certification process clarified to us what our apps really do for kids. And just about the process, what it was like, just as a company who went through this process, it seems like it would be a very difficult thing that we have to do literature reviews, working, day in, day out, on reading journals and explaining how our app works. But it was actually, it required from us, I would say, maybe 4, 5, 6 hours in total of work. It was quite easy to actually get done. It was an enjoyable process, and the way it worked was we gave a large amount of journals and peer-reviewed articles about how GraphoGame works, but it was split into multiple contexts and different languages and language versions. So it was this sort of process back and forth with Natalia and the EduEvidence team that we realized what the importance of clarifying and crystallizing this evidence into one document, into a few statements. Well, it was extremely important for us internally as well. So spurred on by this process and this feedback, we became inspired to really structure the way we do evidence and show evidence in a completely different way. And it's transformed our company to become more coherent and understand the way decision makers are choosing apps. We used to have all these papers, and we would throw them to these decision makers, and it didn't land because these are complex papers, empirical methodologies, randomized control trials with effect sizes and lots of statistics. I don't understand them. So this process was extremely important for making this understandable, this very complex research base. Next slide, please. So I kind of touched on it already, but how did this certification process and also the certification itself benefit us as a company? And I kind of split it into internal and external benefits. And I started earlier on the internal benefits, but the internal benefit was to really categorize our research based on where it's done, what languages it's done, and also the understanding that just having research papers out there is not enough. We need to also synthesize them and tell a story of what the research has done. So when research shows negative results, it actually can be, it's a positive thing for a researcher. It tells you what works and what doesn't work. But for the layman or a decision maker, they see a negative thing and they're like, oh, it doesn't work. In fact, this certification process allowed us to tell the story of how the evidence was built from 2014 to 15 to 16 to 17 and how the evidence built up, and that this certification process allowed us to really clarify this and create a sort of story of evidence that is much more attractive for a buyer or a decision maker at a district or ministry level. And yeah, so that was the internal benefit that we saw, and based on the certification, but also how we started presenting our research, we noticed our inbound website traffic increased significantly. When you look at our Google Analytics, our evidence page, which was inspired by the certification process, that has grown into being one of our most popular pages, and we see now the inbound traffic we get and contacts that we get and leads that we get through our website are extremely much higher value and better targeted. We get very big organizations reaching out saying how impressed they are with our evidence page. And we used to, for years, have our evidence just dumped on our website, but now it's clear and they understand it. And our business to government sales processes, so when we actually go and sell our apps to ministries, the process of developing trust has been halved at least. It's made it much easier to build trust with impact-oriented organizations very quickly. And in the past, we would throw 10 peer-reviewed journals at them, and well, the return on investment on throwing PowerPoints at people or PDFs at people is not very high. And so here you can actually see in the slide the efficacy certification that we got. We got a silver award on the 5 E's that Natalia mentioned earlier. We went for the efficacy route on this one, and this was something that we decided together with Natalia based on our evidence, and she suggested that this is probably the one we'd be strongest at. So it was a collaborative process that helped us understand our own evidence better. And as you can see there, we gave a collection of empirical studies, and they built the case from that, and we got the certification. And we put that certificate pretty much in all of our marketing, all of our website stuff, and PowerPoints everywhere. And it's a bit of a mic drop. So next slide, please. And this is just a collection of, what we've done with our evidence page. There's the link if anyone is interested to see. And we worked with a colleague of mine to create a popular science way of showing our evidence. And this was inspired by Natalia's examples that she's shared with us from what she's seen from the EdTech world, what was really attractive and what worked well. And we spurred on by this and inspired by this, we went on a multiple day project on looking at all of our research and synthesizing it and visualizing it, which is so important as well. So this has nothing to do with the certification, but it changed us as an organization, and it changed the way we present ourselves outwards. And nowadays, when we do social media posts or we reach out in mail campaigns, we mention the certification, we show this evidence page, and we've noticed that our the speed at which we actually generate a cold lead into a sale has increased. So without blabbering on too much, I wanted to firstly thank Natalia for a fantastic process, and I believe for us this certification process has been a game changer internally and externally, and has also improved our sales processes as well. And it's been a surprisingly wide range effect on our business and our company. So thank you to Natalia, but also Tal, for the opportunity to speak at this webinar today.
Great. Thanks so much, Jesper. Really appreciate your insights. With that, I will turn it over to Andreas to share a little more about his experience with the ISTE seal at Binary Logic. So Andreas, I'll turn it over to you.
Hello, everyone. Thanks, Tal, for this opportunity. I'm the head of the academic and research teams at Binary Logic. And Binary is a company that is in the EdTech industry since 1982. I'm in the company since 1986, 39 years. So we have seen everything from their inception. We have collaborated with many other technology companies, with educational companies, publishers on common projects. We have been competitors with most of them. So we have seen what is the meaning of certification and this kind of support that a seal like the seal of alignment from ISTE can give to a product or to a service. I will say some things about what we are doing and how we have used the collaboration with ISTE all these years, and what we have in our minds for the near future and further. Binary for many years was working on developing educational software in the 80s, 90s, 2000, 2010, and in 2012, we started working on computer science and computing curricula as a content provider with resources that are now used in over 65 countries. Everything is project-based, computational thinking, digital citizenship, and now the talk of the town, AI literacy, is all integrated. And what was an obstacle for our company was that we started in Greece, in Athens. And as you can understand, trying to sell a global solution to countries like UK, USA, China, or Saudi Arabia and Mexico, everybody was asking, who are you guys and how can I trust your products, your work, the support that you could provide to our schools. When we started in 2012, we were developing the first series in English and Spanish, and we knew that we needed to support our work not just on educational research, but also on frameworks that were developed by educators and based on best practices from the field. This was what would be the differentiator in terms of the content of what we would provide to the schools. The ISTE standards of students at that time were describing exactly what we wanted to achieve with our syllabus and the learning resources. And when we launched the series, we also saw that we wanted something to support the business side. We needed independent validation of what we were doing. And we understood that the ISTE seal of alignment was the perfect match for our approach. And this is how our relationship with this amazing team of the ISTE seal started in 2014, 11 years ago. Through these reviews all these years, that provided guidelines and comments on pedagogy, on user experience. They were driving us to, in some cases, to even rewrite core lessons and to refine our platform for a better, stronger, evidence-based learning experience. And 2 years ago, exactly 2 years ago, in 2023, Binary Logic was invited to pilot the new SIL revision process, the change of the revision process that was a little bit tough even for us that we were cooperating with this all these years. We received feedback on platform design, on pedagogy, on assessment, and this drove another round of enhancements to our content, to the assessment tools, to the usability of the platform. Aligning to these standards and eventually earning the seal of alignment became our multiplier of evidence. It was not just saying that our solution is good or research-based or it's used by very prestigious schools in the market, but suddenly even education ministries on their state projects were curious about this logo that we had on our textbooks and on the platform. And after a couple of years, they started requiring this kind of third-party review even before accepting bids. Tal shared the LA USD 2 points out of 100 points on the ISTE seal. We have been in bids in, I don't remember if it was in Middle East or Asia, where a Ministry of Education required the ISTE certification as evidence prior to the bid. In order to participate to the bid, they wanted the vendor to be certified by ISTE. So they recognized the value of the ISTE certification. Of course, all these certifications can be something that any vendor can claim. In many regions, they say I'm standards aligned, I'm aligned with ISTE, I'm aligned with CSTA, with UNESCO standards, what I assume with EduEvidence 5Is framework. This will happen for sure, but only if you actually have the ISTE seal, you can be, let's say, it's not to say that we are certified, but to show that you have been reviewed, your solution, your content, your platform has been reviewed by experts, by other educators that have seen problems, issues that you have corrected, and eventually you have been through a process that will make your offer much better. For sure, now decision makers know the difference. They understand what is self-certification, just saying that I'm aligned with something, and actual third-party endorsement. And we have seen that when we go to schools, academic directors and heads of computing, first spot our ISTE badge, and then start asking academic and implementation questions. And if some of them do not know about ISTE, they check it out by themselves and then come back to continue the discussions after they understand what is the value of this kind of seal. This trust signal, I could say, accelerates pilot approvals in schools and eventually the adoptions and purchase orders. It has helped us a lot. Another example that is very recent, it's less than a year old. In 2024, we started an exclusive partnership with McGraw-Hill, the publishing giant. You all know them in education. And the partnership is on everything related to K-12 computer science education in English language. From the beginning, they valued our ISTE commitment so highly that during the negotiations, they insisted on the seal process for the new textbook. And we have created 30 for them, 30 new titles. They wanted to ensure that each title will eventually carry the ISTE seal of alignment. So you can imagine that everything that was developed from scratch in terms of content or digital resources on the platform was taking into consideration the ISTE requirements. They recognized this certification as a critical market differentiator, although their teams had no prior seal experience. It was the first time that they were working with this concept of certification. For us, for binary logic, as I said, certification has become one of our strongest differentiators. It has helped us a lot. And now that everybody is talking about AI literacy, AI education, ministries, policymakers are all making announcements on how they will integrate the new topics into their curricula. From our side, we apply ISTE's best practices along with research, of course, from the educational researchers, but through this combination, we're positioned at the forefront of student-centered, let's say, computer science and AI education. As I mentioned, the seal for us is a global trust signal. 2 days ago, on Monday, one of our Asia partners, who now translates both our Digital Kids and Digital Teens series, reached out asking if they can use the ISTE seal on their local editions, the localized, the translated editions, because their schools, their customers that were using the English edition of our solutions specifically inquired whether the translated resources will carry the same certification as the originals. So we have seen that it's not just us showing, displaying the seal of alignment as a certificate of, as an evidence of quality and let's say compliance to best practices, but also schools and ministries, of course, as bigger organizations. Even schools, private schools, have started asking for this kind of evidence. Every year at the ISTE conference, now it's ISTE Live, I have a poster presentation on how we implement the ISTE standards in the development of our resources. And last year, while we were the presentation area, for how much? It's 90 minutes, I think, in total, to set up, present, and then dismantle the area. We had 2 visitors from state, from the United States state, their Department of Education, asking about how we can customize our solution for them, because having the seal of alignment and being invited by the ISTE organization to talk about the standards in relation with the solutions that we have gave us this opportunity and also this this certificate of quality. So just to wrap up, certification for us is not just a checkbox for binary, and I'm sure for anyone, it's a powerful growth engine. For us, it is a continuous journey of demanding reviews, close collaboration with the ISTE experts for all these past 11 years, and significant impact on content and also market positioning. If anyone has questions, After the webinar, I will be happy to meet and discuss details from our experience and whatever else that you may want to discuss. Thank you.
Great. Andreas and Jesper, thank you so much for providing your experience. I think some of the patterns that we saw through both of yours is like, yes, you want to have the certification and the signal, but even the process of going through the certification was similar to like holding a mirror up and saying like, how are we actually both portraying ourselves and what are things that we can be doing differently? With that, I'm going to turn it back over to Natalia to dive in a little bit deeper around certifications.
Thanks, Tal. And I think there were also some questions around this. So happy to talk through the process, although I need to be very quick now. So I think the next slide we have an explanation of the EduEvidence certification, which essentially acts as an umbrella certification. So if you have been already certified by any of the approved certification providers, some of them are listed on this slide, then you can be recertified so that the certification is aligned with these consolidated benchmarks. And the reason EduEvidence does that is to ensure that there is this global shared language around what we mean by evidence and the impact of individual solutions. So if you have done the work and you already are certified, then you can be recertified. If you don't have a current certification and would like to be certified, then there is a process that can be followed through either contacting EduEvidence or contacting any of the certification providers. And on the next slide, I think we have essentially a visualization of how this works in practice. So on the certifications.eduevidence database, you can see some of the solutions that are publicly listed in terms of being publicly validated, whether they have any given certification in terms of the 3 levels that exist at EduEvidence, which are the bronze, silver, and gold. These 3 levels correspond to the weight of the evidence behind the tool, so how rigorous the specific evidence is, what underlies it. And they are valid for 2 years. So if a company updates their evidence after 2 years, then they can apply for a higher or a different certification, or they can basically update the certification. But this database, it's only a snapshot of the data that lies behind all the different research evaluations that have been done. So very often EduEvidence collaborates with different policymakers and governments to recommend solutions that have been independently verified by researchers in these 5 E areas of efficacy, effectiveness, ethics, equity, and environment. And on the next slide, I think we essentially listed the different certifications that exist, that are out there. You see that the ISTE seal falls under the bucket of effectiveness. So if you have the ISTE seal and would like to be recertified for effectiveness on EduEvidence, it's a very simple process. And indeed, now we have the agreement with ISTE that we do that for free. So you just need to take contact with info at EduEvidence, and you'll be able to claim your free recertification and be in the global database. And if you have any of these other certifications, it's a similar process. It's quite a quick process. But as I say, if you don't have an existing certification, I'm sure that you can go through the process with some researchers, either internally or externally. Many researchers do this work pro bono and can support you to claim the evidence that you have behind your solution, and that can qualify for one of these different strands at the different levels of bronze, silver, and gold. And on the next slide, I think, Tal, I just listed the contact details, a visual of the different badges that exist. And we are lucky to be supported by the Norwegian government. So a little thank you to them. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Natalia. All right, I'm going to just wrap us up on a couple of quick notes. So thank you, everyone who presented today, Jesper, Andreas, Natalia, for sharing your perspectives around ways that certifications have supported you globally. Specific to the ISTE seal, Andreas mentioned the way that the ISTE and ASCD organization have worked to develop a lot of trust around that certification. If you are interested in just seeing what the application guide looks like or the research behind the framework, we're happy to share those guides with you. And there's a link at the bottom that is, if you want to, I think we'll drop that link in the chat along with other resources in the resource tab. We'll share this documentation for you. You could do a self-assessment, or we're happy to hop on a call. Just for the note, the ISTE seal specifically only focuses on digital tools right now. There's not any physical manipulatives that we work with because we focus on usability. And with that, I think we are at time. So thank you so much for joining us. If you have additional questions, feel free to reach out to Natalia or to me, and we will be sure to route you to the correct people. If you have questions for Andreas and Jesper, we are happy to route you to them as well. Thank you again for taking time out of your day, and we hope to be in touch soon. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.